Friday, November 13th marks the night that attacks in Paris killed 130 people and wounded hundreds more, the deadliest attacks on France since World War II. 3 different squads attacked 6 different locations throughout Paris in a matter of 30 minutes, with assault rifles and suicide bombs. Targeted areas included a soccer match, cafes, restaurants, and ended with a mass shooting at a concert in the Bataclan Theater. Shortly after, ISIS claimed responsibility for the attacks as retaliation for French airstrikes on ISIS targets in Syria and Iraq. In order to more clearly understand how the story is presented, we will discuss frames through which the New York Times and the Washington Post present information on the attack. Between studying the 2 news organizations' articles, we discovered that the conflict frame was one of the most prominent frames and the most telling of the implicit bias in the articles regarding the attack. Conflict frames were noted as any moment when contrasting tension was depicted between 2 parties, both physical and verbal. There were powerful accounts of the gunshots, bombings, and militarization of the city in the aftermath of the attack. Talk of the actual conflict leads to mention of spiteful language among differing politicians in relation to poor organization of government and approaches to security. This then sparks heavy emphasis on political issues of national security in relation to the Syrian refugee crisis and how all factors relate towards ISIS's spread throughout the world. Within all the conflict framing, morality is intertwined, as there was a question of how to balance citizens' freedom in light of the event. Further, there was a questioning of why the, quote, terrorists, as the New York Times refers to them, would even carry the axe out in the first place. Ultimately, all of the information directly relating to conflict causes readers who are less knowledgeable of the affairs to subconsciously associate violence with the Muslim community.
The New York Times and Washington Post drew the public eye to the Paris attacks and to the Islamic State and the human stories behind the attack, making the issue officially newsworthy. By immediately covering the Paris attacks widely and deeply, the media legitimized the story and the focus on Islam. While the attack was large and many were killed, making it difficult to understand how this event could not have been in the public mind instantaneously, we must realize that there are large-scale terrorist attacks that occur all over the world that are marginalized by the news and therefore the public tend not to hear about. Take, for example, the tragic Beirut suicide bombings that occurred the day before the Paris attacks, killing 44. This event did not inspire the same fear and sympathy around the world that the Paris attacks did. In fact, many Americans are unaware this attack ever happened. The frames influence how the audience understands and evaluates the Paris attacks by contributing to our social construction of reality. Implications include fear of the Islamic State and terrorism, worries in the U.S. that a similar event could happen to Americans too, and feeling more vulnerable and threatened than they really are. When the reporting continuously connects the Islamic State with terrorism, the audience begins to associate Muslims with danger, even though the Muslim community is not responsible for the attacks, and most of them condemn violence. Though ISIS makes claims to religion and proclaims it is fighting for religion, it does not act on Muslim principles or scripture. So while Islam can appear to be the enemy to the readers, it is not. However, this creates a divide between us and them, possibly enhancing Islamophobia, the fear of and prejudice against Muslims, rather than embracing and supporting the Muslim community at a painful time.